All right. First and foremost, giving all honor, glory, and praise unto the Heavenly Father. In the name of the anointed Savior, Yahweh Shai. Okay, once again, welcome to another Sons of Isaac Sabbath study, to where, you know, tonight's lesson, we're going to go into Daniel chapter 2, right? So this is dealing with Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the rise and the destruction of the earthly kingdoms. Okay, so it's kind of a long lesson, but I'm going to chop it up into parts. So I'm just going to deal the first part, and that's pertaining to Babylon. All right. So I won't go into full detail of all of the kingdoms, but uh, I will deal with specifically the kingdoms, the kingdom of Babylon itself. Okay. So first off, I want to open up to the book of Amos, chapter 3. Amos chapter 3, and I wanted to get verse 7. Amos chapter 3 and verse 7. And the Lord is going to show you something that He does, man, with His servants, the ones who He truly knows, that are truly locked into His word, right? The ones who who He selected, you know what I'm saying, as what I call them, the true prophets. All right. The ones who He's shown great and powerful visions to. So this is what the Lord says. He says, surely the Lord will do nothing, but He revealeth His secrets unto His servants, the prophets. Right. So as it shows us, right, it says the Lord, He revealeth His secrets unto His servants, the prophets. Okay. So the prophets, in old times, they were called seers, right? So Samuel, he was a seer, which was a prophet. Okay. So you see, you had Elijah, Elisha, those were men who were prophets, okay? And you have brothers that, all throughout history, right, who have prophesied this word, right? And there's only been a select few that have been shown many great and powerful things, right, pertaining to the past, the present, and also, the future, okay? So we see that, of course, the Lord showed His prophet Daniel many things that were pertaining to the future. And a lot of those things in which Daniel saw were very powerful. Okay. He's seen nations come up, very powerful nations, right? And he himself is in captivity in one of those nations, and we're going to find out. All right. So the Lord said He reveals His secret counsel unto His servants, the prophets. All right. So we've seen that, the Lord, as I said before, he reveals it to, men who He deems worthy, right? So you see Ezra was shown many powerful things, Daniel, Isaiah, many of the brothers that you read about in this very Bible, right? The King James Bible, you see that the Lord revealed His word to these men, all right? Peter, James, Jude, a lot of these brothers, okay? John, the divine. Okay. So now let's open up to the book of Daniel, chapter 1. Now let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 1, and we'll get started. So, Daniel, chapter 1, and I'm going to read verse 1. And it says, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. Right? So it says this was in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, okay, the king of Judah. All right. So Jehoiakim was a very evil and a wicked king of Judah, all right, which caused him to be besieged by Nebuchadnezzar. So the Most High had sent Nebuchadnezzar, right, to carry away Jehoiakim into captivity. Okay. So it says, and you're going to find out that one of the Lord's prophets, right, was carried away in this very captivity. Okay. And we just read the title of this book, which is the prophet. All right. So it says in verse 2, and the Lord gave Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, into the hands with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God, right? So he carried away part of the most precious things of the house of our God, okay? And he put them into the house of his God, all right? So now it says, it says, and the king spake unto Asaphan, the master of the eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans, right? So you see that they were selecting, of the Israelites, right, and of the king's seed, right, the best of the best. Okay, so they couldn't have any type of blemish or any type of scars or anything. So these men will basically be seated before the king. All right. So now let's read on. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now, now among these were of the children of Judah Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Right. So you see, Daniel was among these captives. All right, who went into captivity during the time of Jehoiakim. Okay, so he was carried away. So he was already in Babylon. All right, before the rest of his brothers, you know what I'm saying, his brothers and sisters, man, were brought in Babylon in 586. All right, so now you see that Daniel was there. They were the children of Judah. Daniel was there. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Right. Now let's read verse 7. And unto whom the princes of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and Mishael of Meshach, and of Azariah of Abednego. Okay, so those were the names that they had gave them. All right. Yes. So that was basically like his Chaldean name. Okay. So he had his Hebrew, which was Daniel Allah, but then of course he was called Belshazzar by the Babylonians. All right. So that was like their surname that they gave them. Okay. So now it says, so now when you read the rest, all it's gonna do is talk about how how Daniel refused the king's portion, right? And how he just wanted vegetables, right? Him and the young brothers that he was with. So of course he turned that down. He said, just give us vegetables to eat, and just come back and check our countenance. All right. So that's basically what happened. So now I'm going to jump to chapter 2. Okay. So now let's read chapter 2, and I'm gonna start at verse 1. So remember, this happened during the time that Jehoiakim was carried away captive. All right. So now it says, and in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him. Right. So this was a dream that basically disturbed Nebuchadnezzar very badly. All right. So I'm talking about, it was so bad that it broke his sleep. So he could not sleep whatsoever. All right. So now verse 2, it says, then the king came to call, then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king, right? So he wanted them to tell him his dream. Okay. But we're about to find out, you know, about these astrologers, Chaldeans that he had called, right? His magicians. Okay, could they tell Nebuchadnezzar his dream or what? Let's read. And it says in verse 3, and the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. So he wanted to know the interpretation of the dream. And it says, then spake the Chaldeans to the king of Syria, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. Right? So he was like, well, tell us the dream, and we'll show you the interpretation of the dream. So let's see what Nebuchadnezzar's reply was. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. So you see, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't playing no games, so he threatened the, the Chaldeans, right? So he was like, look, I don't know. You tell me what my dream was. Now, I want to know the interpretation of it. If you can't, I'm going to kill every single last one of you. So let's read on. He said, but if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. So they said, just king, you have to tell us a dream. Can't read your mind. So let's read on. It says, the king answered and said, I know of a surety that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. But if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lies and corrupt words to speak before me. Till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. Nebuchadnezzar was already up on game. He said, y'all ain't about to lie to me. He's like, I already know y'all prepare corrupt words. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't stupid. You understand? He already knew the game. So he's like, all y'all gonna do is prepare these corrupt words and lies. That's it. So he's like, look, you tell me the dream, or else it's only one decree for you. Remember, he already decreed that they was to be cut into pieces if they did not tell him the interpretation of the dream. All right. So let's read on. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king, except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the king's decree. Now he was angry because of what they said. All right. So now he's like, he wants all of the wise men, the magician, astrology. He wants them all killed now. Okay. So now it says, and the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. So they was getting everybody, right? Nebuchadnezzar didn't want none of them. So he's like, they saw Daniel, right? And his fellows, okay? All right, because they was about to be killed too. So it says, the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Achor, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. And he answered and said to Achor that the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Achor made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. So he told him, like, look, if you give me some time, right, then I will show you the interpretation of your dream. So this was the ability that Daniel had. Okay. So now who else had this same ability, who was able to interpret dreams? Right? Joseph had that ability, okay, to where he could understand a dream, all right, and all of the metaphor and the symbolisms, man, that was in the dream that the Most High was trying to show the king, right? So remember, in the time of Joseph, you see that Pharaoh was showed a great famine that was to come upon the land, right? And then you see that Joseph was in prison for 2 years. I believe it was the baker and the butler, right? The baker was killed, and then the butler was like, "Wait a minute, there's a man that was in the jail with us that was able to understand and understand me in the cook's dreams, right? The baker's dreams." So then they went and they fetched Joseph, and then what happened? Joseph was able to hear out the dream, right? And then he was able to interpret it properly, right? Because that's the gift and the ability that the Most High gave him. All right, and showed him. He showed him those things. Okay, so it's the same thing the same gift that Daniel had. So it says, then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercy of God, the God of heaven, concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So they prayed to the Most High, and the Most High ended up revealing it to him. Okay. So it says, Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his." So he gave all praises, man, and acknowledged the Heavenly Father, right? Blessing them with the understanding and the interpretation of the dream. So it says, and he changed the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hath given me wisdom and might, and hath made known unto me now what we desire of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter, right? So now it was made known unto Daniel, okay? So he sends up his prayer of thanks, right? So now you see, like, all right, remember, Nebuchadnezzar, he didn't tell anybody. He's like, he wanted somebody to tell him and give him the understanding of the dream off top, okay? So now let's continue reading. He says, therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, who the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. And Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? So he asked him a question. Are you able to make known to me the interpretation of this dream, right? So now, let's read verse 27. He says, Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king? But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. So you see, the Most High was revealing to Nebuchadnezzar the things or the events that were going to happen in the latter days, right? He's going to show you that these were kingdoms. So now it says, thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. So now he's letting them know. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed. What should come to pass hereafter? And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king. So he's like, this vision, this what I know is not for, for added wisdom or anything like that, for me to be wiser than any man. This is to let you know what's about to happen, what's going to come to pass. So he says, to the king, and the thoughts thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. So we seen a giant image, right, that stood before him, and it was very terrifying to Nebuchadnezzar, right? It says, this image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. So he said, so now he's showing them what the statue, the very colors of the statue, right? So he was like, the head was of fine gold, the arms and the chest that was silver, right? Then he said, from the belly to the thighs, it was brass, right? Then the legs was iron, and then the feet were part iron and part clay, right? So this is the image in which Nebuchadnezzar was seeing, all right? And this is the image that Daniel was explaining to Nebuchadnezzar, which he saw in his dream. Then was the iron and the clay, the brass and the silver and the gold broken to pieces together and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away. So he was like, then these things were broken to pieces, right? The entire statue was destroyed. Okay. And it says that no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth, right? And you're gonna see what that stone was, right? What that stone that smote the image, man, and that became a great mountain. You're gonna find out what that stone represents, okay? So it says, this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation of thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory, right? So remember, the Lord was the one who had given Nebuchadnezzar that power, right? As we will see in the book of Daniel. I mean, excuse me, not the book of Daniel, but in the book of Jeremiah. In Jeremiah, you know, he was letting all of the nations know that you had to serve Nebuchadnezzar, right? And that you were not to rebel because the Lord was giving him power over the entire earth. Okay. So let's read on. So now, boom, 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 boom. Where was I at? Where was I? Okay, so he says here in verse 37, I'm gonna read verse 37 again. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So now Daniel's letting them know. He's like, Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. So he's like, your kingdom, this is your kingdom right here, the head of gold. This is you, okay? So this is what he's explaining to him, all right? So now let's find out a little bit about Nebuchadnezzar and who he is. You know, I know I should have brought it out in the beginning, but you know, I'm gonna bring it out now. Okay. So real quick, I wanted to go into the illustrated dictionary of the Bible, right? And I wanted to read page 556. Okay, and it's going to explain a little bit about Nebuchadnezzar and who he is. So it says Nebuchadnezzar. It says Nebo, defend the boundaries. It says the two forms represent different methods of reproducing the name. It says the son of Neopalazar and king of Babylon. His father headed a successful revolt of the Babylonians against the Assyrians and founded the Babylonian Empire in 625 BC. Pharaoh Necho, who ascended to the throne in 610 BC, uh, finding the power of Assyria weakened, led an army to the Euphrates in order to protect Egyptian interests. It says, but Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, was taken by Wild Manda and the allies of Nebuchadnezzar in 612 or 606 BC. The Egyptians had a reckoning with the new claimants of the Assyrian dependency. Nebuchadnezzar sent his son Nebuchadnezzar to meet them. The prince defeated them in 605 BC. With great slaughter in the battle of Carchemish, drove them back to their own land and subjugated the interventing regions. But news arrived that his father was dead, committed affairs in the west to his generals. He hastened back to Babylon and ascended the throne in 605 BC. So as you can see, his father was dead, right, and he left a lot of the business that he had to take care of, against the West, right, to his generals. And remember, we'll read a lot about that in the book of Judith, right? So remember, a lot of the events, man, that was going on, right, and of course, I have a PowerPoint on that too, right, called the exile of the children of the Southern Kingdom, right, and it's going to go into all of that. You're going to see like the death, like the battles, the battles that had occurred, right. It's going to talk about the Battle of Carchemish. It's going to talk about the Egyptian pharaoh, that took Jehoaz into captivity and placed Eliakim or Jehoiakim into power. Nebuchadnezzar carried him. It's going to show you all of that. But then the trippy part is a lot of people think that, all of these events, happen one after another, right? But no, all of these things were going on around the same time, right? So you had the war that was going on with Arphaxad, between the Babylonians and the Medes, right? With Arphaxad and Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Assyria, who had just conquered Assyria. That battle was going on at the same time, right? And then you had him, over here getting ready to carry one of the kings of Judah into captivity, or carrying a king of Judah into captivity in the Babylon. So all of these different things, all of these events that we read about in the scriptures were going on simultaneously, right? They were going on at the same time. All right. So there was a great war being fought in the north, right? And then you had in the west, all of the nations rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar goes out and takes revenge on those nations, right? So it was a lot going on, man. And Nebuchadnezzar, he sent his generals that you see Holofernes, he was killed during that process. Judah was still being rebellious and evil, wicked, all of the above, all right? So I just wanted to bring that out a little bit. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Nebuchadnezzar, who he was, just showing his rise to power. So Nebuchadnezzar was his father, and he was the king of Babylon at the time in 605 BC. You see, Nebuchadnezzar became the sole ruler of what we know as Babylon. All right. So you see, at this time, Josiah he was already dead. All right. Remember, he went up against the king of Egypt. Right. Josiah ended up getting killed in that battle. All right. That's when the Egyptians were headed towards what we know as Carchemish, to try to aid the Assyrians, I believe. All right. So so it's like a lot of that was going on. So again, let's go back to the book of Daniel. Excuse me for my rant, but it's a lot of history. There's a lot of history there. Okay. So now I'm on going back to verse 38. All right. So he told him that he is the gold head. Okay. So now going back to the images, right? What he had seen. Okay. So it says in verse 39, it says, after these shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise, right? And he says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, part of the potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with merry clay. All right. So it says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdoms shall be partly strong and partly broken, right? So, so now, of course, so let's deal with a little bit of, the what he was seeing: the gold, the silver, the brass, the iron mixed with clay, so on and so forth. The last kingdom, right? So just to throw some dates out there and whatnot. So it says, so now he said Nebuchadnezzar was the gold head, right? So Babylon, you can write 612 to about 538 BC, right? Which would give you about a time of 74 years that they were ruling, probably a little bit longer, right? 612 BC to 538 BCE. 612 BCE to 538 BCE. All right. So this is when they destroyed Assyria. Right, I go by the date when they destroyed Assyria. So in the book of Tobit, chapter 14, I believe it's chapter 14 and verse 15, it was speaking about the Babylonians and yes, and the Midi, I believe it's the Medes that basically destroyed the Assyrians. Okay. Then there was war between the Medes and the Babylonians, right? So 74 years, okay? I have the exact amount of years on the PowerPoint. I believe it was like 87 that they were like in complete power, almost 100 years. So then the silver, which is basically the Persians and the Medes, the silver arms in the chest, the Persians and the Medes. That was the next kingdom. So then that's 538 to about 333 BCE, which gives you 205 years. 205 years. All right, so 2 centuries the Persians and the Medes were in power. Basically, the Persians were basically like the aristocracy. So now it says the brass, right? The belly and the thighs of brass, that was dealing with the Greeks. 333 BC to about 168 BCE, right? Which is 165 years. Yes, 333 to about 168 BCE, which is like 165 years that the Greeks were in actual power. All right. Reason why I say 168 because that's when Greece became a Roman province. Greece became a Roman province. All right.
So the silver was the arms, right?
The silver, yes, that was the silver. So just put silver, Persians, and Medes. 538 to about 333, 205, 205 years they were in power. Brass, that's the Greeks. Okay. So I also have a lesson on the Greeks as well. All right. Dealing with I believe they're the third beast. So I have one that solely just deals with them. Right. When they came into power, the battles and so on and so forth. I have a lesson on that. That'll be a part of this. That'll be a part of this right here. The rise and the destruction of the earthly kingdoms. You'll see each kingdom that was in power, you see each one of them was taken out by the next. You understand? So you see the Babylonians, they were taken out by the Persians and the Medes. The Persians and the Medes had to basically come together to destroy, the Babylonians, right? So remember, the Medes couldn't just do it by themselves. You know what I mean? The Persians just couldn't do it by themselves, so they combined forces and then took out the Babylonians in their weakened state. All right. So then you have from the Persians and the Medes, you had the Greeks that took them out, right? Then from the Greeks, you had the Romans who took them out. Okay. So each kingdom that came in about power ended up breaking the other kingdom into pieces, all right, or the kingdom before it into pieces.
And Rome would be the iron, right?
Rome is the iron, all right. So that would be 168 BCE, right? Well, like I said, when Greece became a Roman province, right, to 193 AD, and that's when Esau lost power, okay, over the Roman Empire. All right, that goes into the period of five emperors, right? So the period that's dealing with, I believe, Pescennius Niger, Septimius Severus, Claudius Albicinius, and I forget the other generals. But it was a great war, right? The empire was basically divided. Okay, so um, so yeah, to about 193 AD, and then remember 193 AD. That's when Septimius Severus took everything. So he became the emperor, the new emperor, or the first African emperor. When I say African emperor, I'm really saying Israelite emperor. Israelite emperor to conquer the Roman Empire, all right? Or to rule over to rule over Rome. All right. So 168 to 193. So that's 265 years Rome was in power. All right. If you want to add the black rulership, it goes a little bit longer than that. Okay. So so then we have so then the iron mixed with the clay, which it equals America, right? But it goes into a little bit more than that. It goes into Great Britain, I believe Great Britain, like other parts of the kingdom of Esau. Okay, that broke off and formed America, right? So that's why you see, America is like part iron. You know what I'm saying? It has the strength of iron, right? But then it's like clay. You know what I mean? So you could write America. Remember when they became independent in 1776, of course, and they're still in power, right? Right now, 2017. Okay, so that's 241 years from the time they became independent all the way up till now. All right, it has doesn't have anything to do with the 400-year prophecy, right? Some say 17 to 2017. That's the 400 years. Some say 1619 to 2019. That gives you the 400 years, right? But that's pertaining to Israel being in slavery in America. All right, this is dealing with America. When America became America, shall I say, right? America didn't become America didn't become a superpower or a U.S. power until when? Around the 1940s, when they dropped the bomb and showed, yeah, on Hiroshima, and showed the world that they were, you know, the one of the most powerful nations, right? So yeah, 241 years. So that means, man, we've only been free, quote unquote free, or been able to walk without a leash for 152 years. These 152 years, 1865 to 2017. Yeah, that's 150 some years. So that's how long, right? So then of course the stone, right, which is the last kingdom, that's dealing with the kingdom of Christ. All right, the stone that became a mountain, that's the kingdom of Christ. That's the kingdom that will never end. There's no kingdom coming up after it. There's no kingdom that's going to be in power or anything like that. All right, after the kingdom of Christ. All right, Christ is it. Okay, so this is the dream in which Nebuchadnezzar seen. Right. So now, real quick, let's go to the book of Daniel. Excuse me, stay in the book of Daniel, and let's hit chapter 7. Daniel, let's hit chapter 7. Chapter 7, and I want to read verse 1 real quick, so we can get a little bit more about this first beast. So it says. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, so Belshazzar was pretty much the last king, all right, of Babylon at this time. So it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. What sea is that? The Mediterranean Sea. That is the great sea that he is speaking about, right? So now he said the four winds, so the four corners of the earth, right? So there were many wars that were going on, right, in the Mediterranean region itself, okay? So now it says, and four beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon his feet as a man, and had a man's heart was given to it, right? So this was the first kingdom that Daniel was talking about, speaking to Nebuchadnezzar about, which was Babylon, right? So this was the kingdom, the first kingdom which he saw, okay, come up out of the sea, okay, or out of this region. So now, let's read it again. Boom, 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 boom. So he said, one beast divert. Verse 3 said there were four great beasts that were diverse one from another. Real quick, just to prove that these beasts that it's talking about is talking about kingdoms, right, and not literal beast. Okay, so beast was basically like a metaphor. All right. So real quick, Daniel chapter 7, let's stay in chapter 7. Let's read verse 17 real quick. And he says, and these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth, right? So these kings are going to arise out of the earth. So now it says, boom, boom, boom. Yep. So we just read that. So it says that it had eagle's wings, and I beheld till the wings thereof was plucked, meaning it was taken out of power, and it was lifted up out of the earth, and made to stand upon his feet as a man, and had a man's heart was given to it, right? So when I go into the PowerPoint of Babylon, you'll see the wisdom that the Chaldeans had, so on and so forth, right? So I'll address that question afterwards. All prophets were African. No, all the prophets were actually ancient Israelites. Okay, when you read the King James Bible, all right, even when you read the old scrolls of the Torah, you'll see that all of the holy prophets were Israelites. Okay, so now I'm sorry we don't read the Quran. The Quran has nothing to do with, the Holy Bible. All right, that was written by Muhammad or his wife Aisha. All right, we do not read from the Quran whatsoever. Okay, we read from the English version of our text, which is in the King James. All right, that has all of the prophecies that we need. The Quran has no prophecy. All right. So now, um, going back, where was I at? Okay. So now dealing with the kings of Judah before the destruction. Like I said, I'm touching it. I'm just touching a little bit into it. Uh, Said the ancient DNA of Canaanites was the Hephalep's E. Well, guess what? The Negroes of America were what you call, I believe, E1B1A. Okay. So remember, the Negroes of America, we are not Africans. We are Israelites. All right. Africans are Hamitic. The Israelites are Shemitic people. All right. We're Shemitic. All right. Hamitic and Shemitic are completely different. All right. So now let's continue. So of course now the kings of Judah before the destruction. All right. So a lot of people will say, well, what does Babylon have to do with us, so on and so forth. Of course, history revolves around the children of Israel, right? Many of the history that scholars go into, like the regions, locations that you find in the Bible or in the Tanakh or the Torah scrolls, guess what? It was written here by the ancient Israelites. All right. So of course, as I'm reading here, all right. So now Josiah, right? Remember, Josiah was the 16th king of the kings of Judah. Okay, he reigned 31 years. All right, and he was one of the best among one of the best kings that the children of Israel had, right, or the children of Judah had at his time. Okay, so remember, he caused Israel to repent. Remember, his father Manasseh, or excuse me, Amon, was pretty much evil. Then you see Manasseh was evil, and Manasseh has shed much blood. So much, man, that the Most High was going to remove Judah. You know what I'm saying, from his sight, right? But Manasseh ended up repenting, and of course, the Lord had mercy upon him, but he did not acquit much of the bloodshed that Manasseh had shed. So then, to fast forward, Josiah, who had been prophesied, I believe during the time of Isaiah, to come, right? Got the Jews or the children of Judah back on track. All right, started reading the book of the law. They started repenting. They started keeping the Passover and many of the other feasts. So then, of course, you see after Josiah, you see Jehoash. He had took over. He reigned for like 3 months, and that was in 608. So Josiah ruled in his 31 years from 639 BCE to about 608 BCE. Okay, so then Jehoash, right? He reigned for 3 months, and that was in 608. Okay, so that was his reign. Remember, he was carried away by the king of Egypt. Real quick, I'm gonna go there in the book of Second Kings. Second Kings, chapter 24. Actually, 23. And I'm gonna read 23, and I'm gonna read verse 31. So it says, and Jehoash was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riplah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land to tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim the son of Josiah king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoash away and came to Egypt and died there. Right, so Jehoash, that was chapter 23, verses 31 through 34. All right. So remember, the Pharaoh Necho, he had put Jehoiakim in power. All right. He was the king. Okay. So then in chapter 24, you'll see that it says in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, chapter 24, verse 1, it says, in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years, right? So he became the servant of Nebuchadnezzar 3 years, right? And then what happened? And it says, then he turned and rebelled against him, right? So remember, the children of Israel were not supposed to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar, all right? Remember, they were supposed to stay in servitude to him as long as he was in power, okay? But as Isaiah said, remember, he said that this is a rebellious people, all right? So now it says, then he turned and rebelled against him, and the Lord sent against him bands of Chaldees, and bands of Syrians, and bands of Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servants the prophets. Surely at the commandment of the Lord came this upon Judah, to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. and also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. All right. So now you see that's when Jehoiakim reigned 11 years, okay, in Jerusalem. So from 608 to about 597 BCE, that's how long, all right, he was in rulership. Then you see Jehoiachin had became king. That's who Nebuchadnezzar put in power, all right, after Jehoiakim, okay. So in 597 BCE, all right, like I said, in the PowerPoint, I have everything a little bit uh I have it a little bit more organized in there. All right. So then it says, and Zedekiah, right? So after Jehoiachin reigned 3 months, and then he was carried away captive, all right, by Nebuchadnezzar because he rebelled. Okay. So let's read that real quick. So it's right here in chapter 24 and verse 11. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. And Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and the princes and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. All right. About Nebuchadnezzar. So it says, and all he carried out out thence all of the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem and all the princes and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captains and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained save the poorest sort of the people of the land, right? So he carried away all of the mighty men, the mightiest of men of valor, right? Remember, he was going to add them to his armies, right? The craftsmen, they're going to end up building up Babylon, making new weaponry, so on and so forth, right? So he took all of what he needed, and he left the poorest sort of the people, those that could not benefit the king for nothing. So he took basically a lot of the aristocracy, okay? Which Jeremiah talks about that. All right, let's go to the book of Jeremiah. Let's go to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 23. Actually, it's in 13. Excuse me. Jeremiah 13. He said Canaanites had African DNA before they mixed with other Mediterranean peoples. Biblically, there's no such term as African. All right. Remember, the Africans in as a whole were considered the children of Ham. So that basically the Canaanites would be Hamitic. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got distracted. Absolutely. So now it says here in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 13. I'm going to read chapter 13, and I'm going to start at verse, verse 10. And it says, this evil people which refuses to hear my words, which walk in the imagination of their heart, and walk after other gods to serve them and to worship them, shall even be as a girdle, which is good for nothing. For as the girdle cleaveth to the loins of a man, so have I caused to cleave unto me the whole house of Israel and the whole house of Judah, said the Lord, that they might be unto me for a people and for a name and for a praise and for a glory, but they would not hear. Therefore thou shalt speak unto them this word. Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, every bottle shall be filled with wine, and they shall say unto thee, do we not certainly know that every bottle shall be filled with wine? Then shalt thou say unto them, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will fill all the inhabitants of this land, even the kings that sit upon David's throne, then the priests and the prophets and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with drunkenness. Excuse me. And I will dash them one against another, even the fathers and the sons together, said the Lord, and I will not pity, nor spare, nor have mercy, but destroy them. So the Lord was serious, man, about the iniquity of this people and by them not listening. All right. So he's like, he's gonna fill them, he was gonna fill all of the inhabitants with drunkenness. Drunkenness is like what the intoxication of the mind. All right. So it says, he says, hear ye and give ear, be not proud, for the Lord hath spoken. Give glory to the Lord your God before he cause darkness and before your feet stumble upon the dark mountains. And while ye look for light, he turneth into the shadow of death and make it gross darkness. But if you will not hear it, my soul shall weep in secret places for your pride, and my eyes shall weep sore and run down with tears because the Lord's flock is carried away captive. So so you understand that they're going to go into captivity. Say unto the king and to the queen, humble yourselves, sit down. Your principality shall come down, even the crown of your glory. Right, again, going into the captivity. He says, and the cities of the south shall be shut up, and none shall open them. Judah shall be carried away captive, all of it. It shall be wholly carried away captive. Right. He says, lift up your eyes and behold them that come from the north, talking about Babylon, where is the flock that was given thee, thy beautiful flock? What wilt thou say when he shall punish thee? For thou hast taught them to be the captains, for thou hast taught them to be captains, and as chiefs over them shall not sorrow sorrow take thee as the woman in travail. And if thou say in thine heart, wherefore come these things upon me? For the greatness of thine iniquity are thy skirt discovered, and thy heels made bare. Right. So the Lord talking about he's going to carry away, he's going to carry away Judah, right? And he's going to destroy much of the people before he does, right? He said he's going to carry them all away. All right. So boom boom. So then you can write down Jeremiah chapter 14. You can read that. Read Jeremiah chapter 14. And where is it? Yeah, Jeremiah chapter 14, which goes into, the lying prophets and their judgment and their punishment, what's going to happen to them. Also Jeremiah 23, 30 through 35, which goes into the prophets, how they deceiving the people, by their lying, talking about ain't no captivity gonna come and you're gonna be fine and this, that, and the third, right? Well, obviously, I guess they ain't see the captives of their people that were being carried away before that. All right. So then you can write down Lamentations 2, chapter 2, verses 12 through 20, right? That goes into the misery of, Jerusalem itself, right? So remember, it said that the prophets, let me read this. I want to read that I want to read this chapter 14 real quick. So now it says here, I'm going to start at verse 13. It says, then said I, ha, Lord God, behold, the prophets say unto them, ye shall not see the sword, neither shall ye have famine, but I will give you assured peace in this place, right? Lying to the people, just like you see them lie to our people in the Christian church, telling them that they're going to have peace, prosperity, right? In this economy that's collapsing right before your very eyes, ain't nothing getting better. Everything is getting worse. If you think this place is getting any better, you dead wrong. America is a crumbling and it's a fractured infrastructure. This corporation is going down, and they're gonna go down just like a corporation. You understand? So now it says, um, Then the Lord said unto me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name, and I sent them not. Neither have I commanded them, neither spake unto them. They prophesy unto you a false vision and divination, and a thing of naught, and the deceit of their hearts, right? So he's like, they're lying to you as you know, as they're prophesying. So they're using the name of the Lord, right? You know what I'm saying? Just like an authoritative source, right? You're using Moses, right, to validate your false writings. You understand? That's why they get, you know, in them, what you call them, the book of Enoch, Jasher, Jubilees, and all that, right? Using authoritative sources, authoritative names, right, to give your book some authenticity. So it's the same way, you know, when false prophets use the name of the Lord, you know, they'll sit there and use the name of the Lord God. Oh, yes, the Lord's going to bring you peace and prosperity. Just watch. Just watch. In 3 days, that money going to come in. Just watch. In the name of the Lord, you know, Jehovah Jireh and all of that, right? That's what they're going to use. They're going to use the name. All right. So that's why the Lord said they lie in his name. All right. So it says, so then they use divination, right, and things of not and the deceit of their heart. Therefore, thus saith the Lord concerning excuse me, concerning the prophets that prophesy in my name, and I sent them not. So the Lord shows you that He ain't sending them, right? You'll know when the Lord sends one of His holy prophets, right? Because remember, He said it says to the law, to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there is no light in them, right? So if I know for a fact that this man is supposed to be a prophet, he calling himself a prophet, and he's not according to the laws of God, then I can't believe nothing that he say. It's gonna be lies and words. It's gonna be spewing out of his mouth to me. All right. Yep. So he says, yet they say, sword and famine shall not be in this land. By sword and famine shall these prophets be consumed, and the people of whom they prophesy shall be cast out in the streets of Jerusalem because of the famine and the sword, and they shall have none to bury them, their wives, nor their sons, nor their daughters, for I will pour out, I will pour wickedness upon them. Now check this out. Check this out. Now, this actually came to pass, right? So that's why I said go and read the book of Lamentations. Lamentations will show you that real quick. I just want to read verse 20, I believe it is. Lamentations. You can read the rest, man. Lamentations is it's a powerful book when you get into it. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to start here at verse 18. And it says, their heart cry unto the Lord, O wall of the daughter of Zion, let tears run down like a river night, day and night. Give thyself no rest, let not the apple of thine eye cease. Arise, cry out in the night. In the beginning of the watches, pour out thine heart like water. Before the face of the Lord, lift up thy hands towards him for the life of thy young children that faint from hunger on the top of the streets. So he's like, man, at least pray for the children, man, that are dying from hunger, right? He says, behold, O Lord, and consider to whom thou hast done this. Shall the women eat their fruit and the children of a span? So like said, the women eat their children. Check that out. So remember in the siege, right? Especially like one of the greatest sieges that we know about, the siege of 70 AD, we see that they did what? They were eating, you know what I'm saying, their young. The Jews were literally eating their children because they were dying of starvation, right? I believe it's in the book of Josephus. It talks about a lady named Maria, you know, how she basically she baked her son, all right, which was cold, man. But that's what was going on in the siege. All right. So it says, Behold, O Lord, consider to whom thou hast done this. Shall the women eat their fruit, and children of a span long? Shall the priests and the prophets be slain in the sanctuary of the Lord? The young and the old lie on the ground in the street, and my virgins and my young men are fallen by the sword. So you see that, like he said, man, the prophets being slain. You see what I'm saying? So he's like, man, you got the young and the old just lying on the ground in the streets, man. People just dead, dying of hunger, so on and so forth, and giving up hope, all of that. Because remember, in the siege, what happens? The enemy, they cut off all supplies, right? There's no food, no water. They destroy your water reservoirs. The water that's coming in, that's cut off. You understand everything. All right. So that's why it ain't no joke, man. That's why it's not no joke. That's why he said, my young men are fallen by the sword. Thou hast slain them in the day of thine anger. Thou hast killed and pitied not. Thou, thou hast called as in a seldom day my terrors round about, so that in the day of the Lord's anger none escape nor remain. Those that I have swindled and brought up have mine enemies consumed. Right. So he's like, man, those who I took care of, who I grew up with, they all dead now. My enemies didn't kill them. Right. So that's what happens, man. So Jeremiah, he was seeing all of this happening in the city. He was witnessing this with his very own eyes, right? So this is what the Babylonians was doing, to the Israelites when you read when you read about the siege, all right? When you read about the siege of 586, okay? So of course, so going back, so you had Josiah that was the 16th king, Jehoash was the 17th, Jehoiakim the 18th, Jehoiachin was the 19th. And it's another thing, man, that I'm gonna go into as far as with Jehoiachin, right? When it says that he was locked, remember he was locked up for a while, and then evil Mordok had released him, right? I believe he was locked up for like 37 years. Evil Mordok had released him, right? So, and he was given provisions, you understand? So that goes into the aspect of a coon, right? So you see that, Jehoiachin was used as one of the faces for the king, man, to control the people, all right, as a means to control the people. So that's gonna be a good one. And then the 20th king was Zedekiah. All right, Zedekiah was the 20th king, and also the last king to sit on the throne, right? But biologically, it was already cut from Jehoiachin. That was it. So the Lord had already said Coniah, which is Jehoiachin. He said, "Count that man childless." All right. So biologically, there were no more kings of Judah to sit upon the throne physically. Okay. So you can write down Jeremiah 22 for that. Jeremiah 22, 24 through 30. Okay. Um, then, of course, you can write down Jeremiah 27, 1 through 8. That's dealing with the prophecy of Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, 27 and 1 through 8. So that's dealing with the prophecy, like I had mentioned earlier, about Nebuchadnezzar being, coming into power, and how he was, all nations were to be in servitude to him. All right. So like I said, I'm gonna bring out the PowerPoint most likely during our Monday class, and I'm gonna go into that one, the Southern Kingdom's exile, or the exile of the Southern Kingdom. So you can kind of see, like, Nebuchadnezzar's revenge in the events that were going on during that time. All right. So are there any questions? Are there any questions before I go back to chapter 2? I just wanted to talk about the Jews a little bit, the Israelite kings. All right, so let's go back to Daniel chapter 2 and let's finish up. So Daniel chapter 2. I'm gonna start at verse 39 again. So then it says, and after these shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and a third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. So the third kingdom of brass, right, which shall rule over all the earth, is talking about the Greeks, just like I showed you, okay? So it says, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, and as iron that breaketh all things shall be broke. It breaketh in pieces and bruised, right? So of course, as it says, it breaketh into pieces and bruised. Remember, that's talking about the Romans, all right? How fierce and how vicious the Romans, what I'm saying, actually were. Okay. So that's my thing, man. When you really start really like digging into to a lot of these kingdoms, right? You'll see that many of them, what I'm saying, were like morally corrupt, right? And what happens when a nation is morally corrupt? What happens when you allow prostitution, you know what I'm saying, murder, fornication, you allow all of these different things, man, to come upon your nation, right? What happens when all of that? What happens when all of those things fester and continue to manifest in your nation? It destroys itself, right? So that's why when we look at the Most High's laws and see how important they are, the Most High's laws are important. That's why He tells us, man, thou shalt not prostitute thy daughter, cause her to be a whore, right? Lest the land fall to wickedness. You see, that has a lot to do with it. I remember reading about Julius Caesar, right? How he tried to repair, destruction of the Roman nation. You know what I'm saying? And trying to get them to marry, right? Because everybody was in the hookers and prostitutes, so on and so forth, right? And homosexuality, and it was destroying the nation. Men were becoming sterile, women were becoming sterile. You know what I mean? The Most High began to shut down the reproductive organs, man. The diseases that was running rampant amongst the people. So all of those things, man. You see when all of that is happening, everything begins to the structure, everything begins to just to fall apart. That's Mhm. Absolutely. Just like when you look at the nation of Israel, right? Why did the Most High show us, man, the curses of Deuteronomy 28? There was a reason, right? He shows us, man, look, you keep the commandments, you're going to grow in wealth, you're going to prosper, you're going to have as many healthy children as you want. Your cattle going to be healthy, reproduce, everything's going to be good, right? But now what happens when you break those laws, right? Everything begins to just like break apart. You see what I'm saying? That's why our relationships, you know what I'm saying, the marriages failed, brotherhood failed. You see that, our agriculture failed. We became the tail. We was lending, we were lending the nations. Now we're borrowing money. You know what I'm saying? To try to keep ourselves afloat. Our enemies are attacking us and destroying us, man, because our men of war are weak. You see that? So all of those things, man, that's what happens when your nation becomes morally corrupt, right? Just like you see America now, right? America is this great melting pot, but then what happened? It's an immoral beast, right? So when I break down, I'm gonna break down that Revelations chapter 18, and you're gonna see like this is it. When it talks about Babylon, the greatest fallen is fallen and has become the habitation of devils, slanderers, deceivers, right? The place of every foul spirit. You know what I mean? So I'm like, man, you can only imagine, just the destruction that's waiting for this place, right? That's what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, man, and that's what happened to each one of these kingdoms that we read about. A lot of them, they put their hands on the apple of the Lord's eye, right, which is the nation of Israel, right? You'll see that the Greeks did it horribly. The Persians and Medes, they pretty much they were okay. You know what I mean? They still had the evils in which they done to us. And then of course the Babylonians, of course, the Romans. You see a lot of that stuff, man. The persecution that the Christians were going, the Christians were going through. You know what I'm saying? Remember, the Christians were Israelites, right? They were the followers of Christ. They were being persecuted by the white Romans. You see what I'm saying? You know, so it's like you look at all of that, man. That's why a lot of those nations had to come down. The Lord prophesied against many of those nations because of that. All right. So I'm gonna have to go into my lesson on Islam too. Go on that one too. My PowerPoint on Islam. Get into that. So showing how the Muhammad. showing Muhammad was not the last prophet. You know what I mean? We could talk about John. You know, John was the last. John was the last prophet to prophesy the Messiah. You understand? And then everybody else, the coming of the Messiah. Everybody else after that prophesied of his coming and his resurrection. You know, or his second coming of his resurrection, or the resurrection and of his second coming. Tongue tied. The who? The Mormons? Yeah, Mormons. The Mormons. You want to get into the polygamy, huh?
No, I mean as far as
the polygamy that they be into. Brothers and sisters touching each other and getting married, and you know now your son and married your stepdad and all of that.
Grandpas and granddaughters.
Yeah, your brother and married your grandpa, and it's just all of that sick stuff that going on in the Mormon faith and all of that, right? It's crazy, man. I got to check out that movie by Warren Jeffs, right? What's it called? Warren Jeffs?
Yeah, it's a documentary.
Yeah, the documentary on Warren Jeffs, man. Some sick stuff, man. You talk about some freaky stuff, man. I thought Caligula was horrible, man. But man, the Mormons, they do some crazy stuff, boy. They do some crazy stuff. But let's go back. Let's finish this up real quick. So it says, verse 41, it says, whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, the potter's clay, and the part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the merry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with merry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Right? So that's talking about Esau. That's talking about the kingdom of Esau mixing himself up. Right? Those are them cats. Crazy. Get my BB gun on. So it says, and in the days of these kings shall God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever, right? This is the kingdom of Christ, all right? So then it says, for as much as thou saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it break in pieces the iron, the brass, and the clay, the silver and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof is sure. So he's like, the dream is certain. It's going to happen. And the interpretation is sure, and it is correct. He says, then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshiped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. So he was like, because he was able to interpret the dream, he was like, he fell to Daniel's feet and started worshiping him, right? And he says they wanted to offer sacrifices unto him. So it says, and the king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth, it is your God is a God of gods and the Lord of kings and the revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the provinces of Babylon. But Daniel sat at the gate of the king, right? So you go into Daniel, man, you see, that's where the book of Susanna comes in too. You see, Susanna took place in Babylon. Daniel was a young man in Babylon. At the time, right? Susanna. Huh? Yeah, it was before the interpretation of the dream. He had put those two elders down. All right. So then after that, you'll see, you'll see Nebuchadnezzar, man. He just went on this ego trip afterwards. He ended up setting up a statue, you know what I'm saying, of the very image of which he saw, right? And made everybody to worship it. You understand? And then, of course, to play the music and all of that. If once the music played, and you got to bow down and worship this image, right? So, and then after that, the Most High ended up humbling Nebuchadnezzar. You understand? I'm talking about he literally had to humble Nebuchadnezzar, because the Babylonians were very powerful. Nebuchadnezzar was very powerful. All right. So Mordecai was in Babylon too. So he was carried away. So so then yeah, Nebuchadnezzar was humble, man. He was humble very greatly. That's why, remember when we was talking about that, while he was eating leaves and all that stuff, man, he was walking around like after a manner of beast. The Most High man had brought him down low, even though he was given everything. All right. Lost his mind for a minute, then once he humbled himself, then the Most High restored him. So so we'll stop there, and of course, we'll pick it up. As I said before, this is going to be the first one of part one, shall I say, of the rise and the destruction of the earthly kingdoms. So remember, Babylon was destroyed by the Persians and the Medes, and once we go into the Persians and the Medes, you'll see the destruction of the Babylonians, right? And what happened to them? Okay, and that's when we start getting into Mordecai and Esther, and start seeing the role that they played in Babylon, right? And you'll see even Esau was there. Okay, so so of course, we're gonna close out. We're gonna send up our prayers. You know what I mean, for those who are online, man. All praises to the Most High. Thanks again. Tomorrow, we're gonna open up for our closing Sabbath study at 5 o'clock. So of course, I'll be live as well around that time is too. Okay. So for those that have questions, please feel free to inbox me as well. And of course, we can also talk. Please check out the YouTube channel Sons of Isaac 144, and also my website Sons of Isaac 144.org, of course. And if you have any more questions, just feel free to hit me up. The conference information also is on the website, so you can check it out. So, for the so-called blacks, Hispanics of Indian descent and the Indian descent and the Native American Indians, of course, I say, Kwam Yasharala, rise to the nation of Israel. All right. And for us, for those who are still online, we're going to send up our prayers and we're going to close out. All right. Get out this garage, man. These cats, they going crazy, boy. Mating season or something. When cats, they fight, man. They fight they be fighting viciously. All right, so the rise we face the east, we'll send up our prayers. Yes, daughter.